In tonight's story, betrayal runs deep, but revenge runs deeper. You're listening to Revenge with Jack, where justice always finds its way. The last thing I heard was Lena yelling, "Figure it out yourself," like it was a punchline. Then rubber bit asphalt and the sedan lunged away, taillights thinning into the pale October evening. Marissa's laugh carried for a second, high and bright. Chloe's too. Then wind. Just wind. I stood there with my coffee going cold in my hand, my other palm tight around the wrong set of keys. House keys, not truck keys. My truck was 200 miles south, parked in our Denver driveway like a faithful dog that didn't know I'd be late coming home. The sky over Montana felt close enough to tap. The air tasted like metal. Snow was somewhere on the road ahead, breathing slowly. I called Lena first. Straight to voicemail. I tried again because hope makes you do repetitive things. Then I tried Marissa. Then Chloe. Same loop. The kind you can feel in your throat. For a minute, I tried to explain it away. Maybe they were circling back. Maybe this was a joke with soft edges. I replayed the look Lena gave me through the open window, the grin that didn't include her eyes. It wasn't soft. Inside the station, fluorescent lights hummed like insects. A tired clerk told me no buses ran through here. Billings, 40 miles east, was my only shot. The map taped beside the register had coffee stains like tiny storms. I borrowed the landline and called a taxi service I couldn't afford. $60. I said yes. Pride is heavier than cash when you're stuck. Back outside, I watched the road that had just erased my marriage. 8 years of being husband, planner, fixer, the one who remembered when to rotate tires and when to book the cabin for our anniversary, blown flat by the simple physics of a car pulling away. I thought about the drive up, how they'd insisted we take one car, how the hotel was in Lena's name alone, the way they whispered and then smiled when I looked back. I'd asked once what was funny. Sister stuff, Lena said, like that phrase was a locked door I should respect. I did. I kept respecting locked doors until I forgot how to jiggle a handle. By the pumps, a loose receipt skittered at my boots and stuck. "Thank you for fueling with us," it said. I almost laughed. Gratitude printed in a place that sells exits. I paid the clerk for the coffee I hadn't finished and stepped into the blue hour. The mountains had turned to paper cutouts against a dim sky. I felt something in me settle, not hard, just clear. Whatever this was, it wasn't a prank designed to help me grow. It was a demonstration, a lesson in rank and belonging. I had been placed. The taxi's headlights appeared like a small promise. I lifted my bag. The wind moved through my jacket and kept going. I met Lena on a Monday that smelled like drywall dust and rain. North Peak had us pouring footings for a commercial build, and her team came through in clean boots, checking soil reports and runoff plans. She had a clipboard and a laugh that made the sheet metal echo. I remember how she listened, like turning her face toward sunlight. I said something about the wind fighting our forms. She nodded and answered like she'd grown up speaking the language of rebar and sky. We got coffee in paper cups that went soft at the rim. We talked about work first, then books, music our dads played in old trucks. She liked maps. I liked how she folded them. Her hair smelled like cedar shampoo that probably had a nicer name on the bottle. By Friday, we were passing each other thermoses and sharing a sandwich on a tailgate. She touched the scar on my thumb and said, "You're careful." I thought it sounded like a blessing. The sisters arrived like weather fronts you're told not to worry about. Marissa, older by 2 years, marketing brain, quick with a plan. Chloe, the youngest, still tasting careers like free samples, bright eyes, a pocket full of opinions. At dinners, I learned the choreography. Lena in the middle, her sisters on either side, a triangle with no room for a fourth point. They told stories with shortcuts, laughed at memories I hadn't earned. When I tried to catch up, I felt like a reader who came in halfway through a chapter. "It's not personal," I told myself. "It's history. Don't take it to heart," Lena would say in the car home. "They're protective." The words sounded kind, like a sweater pulled over your shoulders. But there were threads I couldn't stop noticing. Marissa correcting a detail in my story with a smile that showed a little tooth. Chloe rolling her eyes when I stood up to help carry chairs. "Not everything needs rescuing," she'd say. I'd sit back down with a grin I hoped looked easy. Men in my family fix things. I was still learning what to do with my hands when there wasn't a task. Holidays were crowded. The Hart house smelled like cinnamon and lemon cleaner. There was a photo wall I wasn't on. I'd hold Lena's plate while she talked to an aunt, Then we'd eat standing by the sink because the table filled fast. I told myself this was what merging lives looked like. Give a little. Wait your turn. Belonging takes time. But time can also sand you down. Small exclusions polish into habit. We'd plan a weekend away, then cancel because Marissa needed help with a pitch deck. We'd choose a show, then switch because Chloe couldn't stand noise while she studied. Lena and I would make up the difference with late-night walks and the soft rituals of us. Notes on the fridge, the way she'd steal my hoodie, my shoulder found on the couch. Love has its own gravity. It held. Still, when the group chat pinged, our plans bent. Lena's face lit a certain way. The phone stayed, turned face up. I told myself I liked her loyalty. I said I admired their bond. And I did. But admiration doesn't warm you when you're standing just outside a circle in winter, cupping your breath. Pretending the cold is invigorating. We took I-25 like a bead string north. Denver shrinking in the mirrors until the skyline turned into a sketch. Early start, thermos coffee, a bag of gas station almonds passed back and forth. No need to caravan, Lena had said the night before. We'll save on gas, and parking's easier. It sounded practical in the way her ideas often did. Numbers tidy, edges smooth. I left my truck keys on the hook by the door, a small surrender disguised as common sense. The sedan felt smaller than it looked. Marissa sat behind me, knees bumped to the back of my seat in steady taps, a metronome I couldn't set. Chloe sprawled, earbuds in one ear, the other open for commentary. The road unrolled. Fort Collins, Cheyenne, the long stitch of Wyoming where the wind practices for November. We were a family unit in a capsule, and I wanted that to mean something more loving than airless. Hotels in my name, Lena said, flipping through printed confirmations. She liked hard copies, trusted paper more than pixels. Check-ins flexible. Marissa glanced up, smiled quick. We'll have to see if Evan can survive spontaneity. Light tone, the kind used to wrap something sharper. Chloe added, remember when you used to be fun? I let my mouth do the work my heart didn't feel. Laughed. Said something about being a reformed wild child. Rolled with it because men like me are taught that rolling with it is part of love. Outside Rollins we stopped for pie because the sign promised real butter crust. Diners are their own country. Coffee that arrives before you ask, aging jukeboxes, servers who call everyone Han, without losing a shred of dignity. I paid, the way I usually did, and no one argued for the check in that polite choreography people do when cost is evenly shared. Thanks, Ev, Lena said, touching my wrist. I felt the warmth travel further than it had any right to. Back on the road, talk slid toward bucket lists. Marissa wanted Lisbon in spring. Chloe wanted a studio in some city with rooftop parties and plants that climbed brick. Lena said, Patagonia, and looked out the window like a promise lived there. I said, build something that outlasts me, and felt old-fashioned even as the words landed. Construction does that to you. You start measuring days and footings cured and roofs framed. 60-hour weeks aren't bragging rights. They're the language of getting by. I thought bringing those hours home was love translated into heat and light. Somewhere beyond Casper, I noticed the telltales I'd file later under staging. The way Lena's phone kept face up, little glances passed between them like folded notes. The hotel being only one room in her name. The careful insistence on one car. The jokes about me being domestic, as if stability were a stain you couldn't wash out once it's set. Each moment a moth-winged soft thing, harmless alone. Together, a swarm. We crossed the state line into Montana under a sky so wide it unbuttoned your chest. Adventure. Chloe cheered, forehead to glass. I gripped the wheel and smiled, telling myself I was already on one. Marriage is a road, I thought. You read the weather, you keep the tires inflated, you listen for new noises. But I didn't yet know that some people call a detour growth when what they mean is power. The clerk had that end-of-shift look, shoulders slightly rounded, jaw working a peppermint. No buses here, he said, eyes flicking to the road like it owed him money. Billings does. 40 miles east. His voice had the dry mercy you hear in people who have watched a lot of small emergencies walk through their door. I stared at the map, thumbtacked behind him. Counties in faded pastels, a river like a loose thread, and felt oddly grateful for cartography. At least paper doesn't lie about distance. I borrowed the station landline. The spiral cord tried to curl back into itself. Taxi dispatch answered on the third ring. $60. I'll be out front, I said, as if I had other options. Outside, the wind lifted my jacket and put it back down, testing seams. I sipped my coffee past the bitter place into lukewarm resolve. If marriage is logistics wrapped in feeling, then abandonment is logistics stripped of ceremony. You still have to get from A to B. You just do it without the soft words. When the cab rolled up, the driver leaned across to pop the lock. "Billings?" he asked, like a bartender saying, "You sure?" I nodded. The cab smelled like vinyl warmed by sun and a pine-scented tree that had seen better winters. We pulled onto the highway. Fences ran beside us like score lines. Cows stood in fields, arranged with the quiet geometry only animals understand. I texted no one. I had learned overnight that silence can be a tool. In psychology articles people share online, they say humiliation is social pain that lights up the brain like physical injury. I believed it. My chest had that deep bruise feeling. Yet underneath, something practical woke up. Inventory mode. Phone at 60%. Wallet. 2 cards, cash enough for snacks, and a bus ticket if luck held. Bag. Change of clothes, the kind of tools you forget you carry. A pocket knife, a pencil, a tape measure. I smiled at that. Even stranded, I brought ways to measure things. Billings bus station was a fluorescent island wrapped in posters for places that felt far and forgiving. I bought a ticket with hands that remembered birthdays and bills. Then I waited, the way men wait who don't want to be seen waiting. When the Greyhound sighed in, I climbed aboard and found a seat by the window where the glass still showed past fingerprints. The bus exhaled us into the night. 14 hours is a long time to be alone with the accurate version of your life. Wyoming slid by in segments. Headlights, snow fences, the occasional town collected around a single lit sign. I thought of Lena's face when she said, "Sister stuff." I played it against Marissa's amused tilt, Chloe's practiced disbelief in needing anyone. I wondered when care had been replaced by commentary. Somewhere near Casper, the bus grew quiet, the kind of quiet where you hear people sleep. That's when the word came to me like a road sign, not prank. Demonstration. A demonstration has an audience. It asked you to watch your own place from the outside. I saw myself, dependable as a well-packed toolbox, standing on cold concrete with the wrong keys in my hand. I saw 3 women driving away, laughing because the show was working. The window caught my reflection and wouldn't commit to it. I closed my eyes and let the road do the steady thinking. At dawn, the bus washed in pale light. I felt smaller and somehow more contained. Like a house after a storm when you know which shingles held. I didn't expect an apology anymore. I didn't expect anything. Expectation is a rope. I slipped it. Denver looked like it always does on Sunday mornings. Quiet streets, newspapers thumping porches, dogs explaining themselves to hydrants. I let the cab drop me 2 houses down and walked the last stretch because I didn't know how to arrive at my own door like a guest. The driveway was empty. Lena's sedan hadn't returned. Inside, the house held its breath the way rooms do when they're about to learn new definitions. Coffee mugs waited in the sink with the small patience of unfinished things. The jacket she loved was slung over a chair back, her scarf a lazy river across the banister. I stood in the kitchen and listened to the refrigerator hum. It felt like being in a paused video. 8 years stacked in neat habits. Keys in the ceramic bowl, boots heel to heel on the mat. A magnet clipped to the calendar reminding us to change the furnace filter next week. Maintenance of a shared life. It suddenly read like set dressing. I told myself I wasn't here to snoop. I was here for clarity, the kind that doesn't arrive uninvited. Her laptop sat open on the dining table, half closed like a yawn. Password protected, sure, but Lena was a window keeper. Tabs bloomed along the top like small flags. I didn't force anything. I just looked at what was already saying itself. A cloud drive opened to a folder named Heart Stuff Yellow Heart. A subfolder called Sisters. Inside, screenshots. First, our texts, captured and exported, my words corralled into little gray bubbles and labeled with laughter. Dead to the world as usual. Lena had typed beneath a photo of me sleeping on the couch, my mouth a little open, the TV painting blue across my forehead. Heart emojis clustered beneath it from Marissa and Chloe. I tried to find myself funny and couldn't. Then the thread about Montana. It began months ago. Marissa, we should ditch him somewhere and let him prove he's resourceful. Faced with tears of joy, Chloe. He's so dependent on Lena for everything. It'll be like wilderness therapy, but with pavement. Lena, you two are terrible, but he might finally loosen up. Could be hilarious. Plans hardened. One car, hotel in her name. Stage stop 40 miles out. Lines rehearsed. Contingencies too. What if I caught a ride fast? What if I called their mom? Their chat handled me like a spreadsheet. Variables, outcomes, jokes. I scrolled until the words blurred into a long white river. Somewhere in there was a bet about how long it would take me to crawl back. Chloe had the shortest estimate. Marissa allowed a full day because she said I was stubborn but soft. Lena posted a gif of a puppy pawing a door. A part of me went very still. Not rage. Not yet. More like the feeling you get when you're under a beam and someone removes the temporary post you didn't know was holding the weight. The house doesn't collapse. It just tells you the truth about stress. I closed the laptop. The hinge clicked like a small verdict. Upstairs, I pulled a duffel from the closet and filled it bare bones. Work clothes, toothbrush, the box with my dad's old watch, the photo of me and Kevin at Rampart Reservoir with sunburned noses and cheap fishing poles. I didn't leave a note. Notes asked to be read the way you meant them, and I was done with asking. At the door, I didn't look back. People say that to sound brave. I didn't look back because the rooms were already becoming a story someone else would tell about me. Outside, the air had that thin, clean edge Denver wears after a wind. I locked nothing. I left the porch light off. I walked to the street and tried on a sentence I hadn't said out loud. I am leaving. It fit. Kevin opened the door like I'd just stepped out for ice, not driven an hour with my life folded into a duffel. He works nights, keeps the apartment dim even in daylight. Spare room's clean enough, he said, and handed me a beer like it was a towel I'd asked for. We didn't do explanations. Brothers like us keep a short vocabulary for emergencies. We sat on his thrift store couch and let the TV talk to itself until the silence settled into something that didn't scrape. How long you staying? He asked finally. Don't know yet. He nodded. That was the entire contract. A place to sleep. A door I could close. The next morning I called North Peak and asked for a transfer to the hospital renovation in Colorado Springs. We'd been short-staffed. My supervisor said, Wednesday, if you can swing it. I could. Muscle memory took over, steel-toe boots, coffee in a travel mug, a thermos of calm. Work is a shelter you build from inside. By Tuesday afternoon the call started. First Lena's cell, then numbers I didn't recognize. Voicemails stacked with the clean certainty of people who believe they own the narrative. Evan, where are you? This isn't like you. Call me back so we can sort this out. No apology threaded between the lines. Just confusion that I had stepped off script. I blocked numbers until the phone felt lighter. Thursday morning, Kevin came home from his night shift and stopped at the window. She's downstairs, he said. Been idling for 10 minutes. I looked. Lena's sedan sat across the street, the hood ticking as it cooled. She saw me in the glass and got out, smoothing her hair the way she does before meetings. I met her in the lobby, where fluorescent lights make everyone honest. Evan, she said, stepping toward me, hands warm and rehearsed. Thank God. I've been worried sick. What do you want, Lena? I want you to come home. We need to talk like adults. Her smile wavered when I didn't mirror it. It was a prank, she said, the word bright as if it could disinfect what it touched. You're taking it so seriously. You left me on the side of a highway and drove away laughing. Because you needed it, she said. And there it was, the clean, clipped shape of belief. You're so dependent. So careful. We thought if you had to figure something out alone, you might loosen up. The lobby hummed. Somewhere upstairs, a neighbor's dog scratched at a door. I saw the woman I'd married standing in the light that makes no room for shadows. I'm not coming back, I said. Her mouth tightened. Then came the cycle. Promises like coupons, threats with soft edges, a quick reach for guilt. You can't just disappear because your feelings are hurt. Be reasonable. I pressed the elevator button. When the door slid open, she stepped forward, still speaking, still arranging explanation like furniture. I stepped inside. The doors closed while her words kept moving in the space between us like moths hitting glass. Back upstairs, Kevin handed me another beer without looking away from the TV. Door sticks, he said when I took the spare room. Kick low if it does. I slept hard, the kind of sleep that has nothing to prove. Changing a number is a small surgery. You don't bleed, but you feel the stitch. I stood at the carrier counter under a poster of smiling strangers and signed the form that would quiet my phone. When I walked back out into the Colorado spring sun, the air felt roomy. I bought a cheap case in a gray that didn't have to impress anyone. A practical color. Like primer. The apartment I found was a one-bedroom over a barbershop that still did straight razor shaves on Saturdays. The stairs creaked a report as I carried boxes up. The place smelled like old wood and clean dust. I liked the window that faced west. Evenings poured in without permission. First groceries were beans, eggs, tortillas, coffee. I bought a plant and promised nothing to it except water and a place near light. I stood there, watching the kettle breathe, and felt a small animal inside me uncurl. Choosing takes energy. It also returns it. I painted the living room a color I'd once called dull, soft bone with a touch of warmth. It made the baseboards look proud. I didn't ask, "What do you think?" when I finished. A silence answered, but not the lonely kind. The kind that lets you hear the tick of cooling paint cans and your own pulse calming. Work helped. Hospital renovations are patient. You pull away a wall, and the building tells you its history in chalk lines and hidden pipes. I like the honesty of it. At lunch, I ate in my truck with the door open and let cruise talk drift by. Scores, kids, prices. Ordinary weather. No one asked me to explain my face. Then my mother called. "Evan, honey," she said, voice slipping through years. Lena came by the house. I leaned against the counter and watched the kettle reheat water it had just made hot. "She says you're having some kind of breakdown," Mom continued. "That you disappeared after a family trip and won't answer her calls." I could hear her trying to stack worry neatly. "It's not a breakdown, Mom. We're having problems." "What kind of problems can't be worked out?" she asked, because moms ask from hope. I didn't want to hand her the mechanics of cruelty disguised as jokes. The screenshots. The planned desertion framed as love. How do you make that sound like anything other than pettiness when the world is loud with real disasters? "I'll call you later," I said. "I'm okay." After we hung up, the room felt thinner. I realized Lena was still writing the captions under my life for other people to read. So I drove to Denver to see Marcus. He opened with a hug that clapped my back. We sat on his porch and watched neighborhood kids invent a game with a cracked frisbee and 3 rules they changed every throw. I told him the story in pieces. He swore softly and passed me a beer. Then he said, "At your wedding, man, I noticed things. You'd laugh with my crew and Lena would cut in, smiling, but moving you like a chess piece. Back then I called it newlywed cling. Now I don't know. It hit like a slow echo. Control doesn't announce itself. It learns your door codes and calls it love." That night, driving past the old house, I didn't stop. I didn't even slow. I let the knowing settle. I didn't run away. I ran toward a version of myself that could make a room gentle and keep it that way. Patricia Coleman's office was 3 floors up in a building that used to be a bank. Heavy marble in the lobby, quiet elevators, a receptionist who spoke like she was guarding a museum. Patricia shook my hand like a contractor, firm, brief, no theater. She listened without leaning in or widening her eyes. Some people chase the drama out of a story just by letting it sit on a legal pad. "Colorado's no fault," she said, pen still. "We don't have to prove good or evil to dissolve a marriage. But documentation matters for everything else. Especially patterns." She had a way of arranging words like lumber, square, load-bearing. I gave her what I had. The blocked numbers. Calls to my supervisor's desk phone on alternating days from unfamiliar lines. Voicemails in which apologies never learned the right tense. My mother's worry, hand-delivered by Lena. The night at Kevin's lobby. The long list of times I didn't answer. Patricia nodded and underlined, not once asking me to produce outrage for her benefit. "Don't engage," she said. "Silence is evidence too. If she shows at your work, document it. Call the police if it edges into disturbance. But don't meet words with words. They're boomerangs in these situations." I signed the engagement letter. Her pen clicked like a small gate closing. A week later, she called me back to the same room, same yellow light through the blinds. "Your wife retained counsel," she said, sliding a neat stack across the desk. "They're going for abandonment. Claim you left without warning and refuse counseling." I felt a cold, unsurprised place open. The kind that knows exactly how a story will be told when you're not in the room. "That's their frame," Patricia continued. "Here's ours." She turned the stack and the pages bloomed. Screenshots I hadn't seen. An investigator had harvested what the sisters forgot to lock down. Social post from the very night I was counting highway markers in a bus window. Lena and her sisters at a bar in Billings, shoulders pressed, shot glasses lit by neon. Captions about girls' weekend and freedom. Timestamps that didn't care who was embarrassed. In one photo, Marissa wore my Broncos cap, tipped sideways like a joke. I felt the soft, absurd loss of that hat, and something harder behind it. Then the chats. Longer than what I'd found at home. Threads where my habits were dissected in tidy bullet points. Where contingencies were written like recipes. If he gets a ride too fast, plan B. Tell him reception died, and we panicked. Bets on how long it would take me to crawl back. A gif of a puppy pawing a door. My life rendered in stickers and shorthand. Patricia tapped a corner with her pen. This is not a prank, she said, voice even. It's coordinated humiliation. It contradicts any claim they feared you. It demonstrates manipulation, harassment, and a willingness to broadcast it. She looked up. We file our response tomorrow. You won't say a word to them. You'll let paper do what paper does. I signed the petition to dissolve the marriage. The ink felt heavier than it should have. On my way out, the elevator mirrors caught me from 3 angles. I looked like a man who builds straight walls and has finally found a level that tells the truth. Court mornings taste like metal. The building downtown had that scrubbed smell, citrus cleaner, and old paper. I wore the suit I'd been married in, the navy that used to mean beginnings. It fit differently now, a little looser at the waist, a little truer at the shoulders. Patricia walked beside me, briefcase quiet, expression set to weather. We'll keep it simple, she said, and pushed the door with a palm that didn't tremble. Lena sat at the other table with a lawyer whose tie looked expensive in a way that asked to be noticed. She'd lost some weight. Her hair was pinned back like she'd rehearsed neatness. When she glanced up and found me, a quick smile tried the air between us, the old signal, same team. I let it pass like a bus I wasn't catching. Her attorney went first. He said the word abandonment the way you pronounce a diagnosis. He called the gas station episode a misunderstanding among family members, a harmless prank misread by an overly sensitive husband. He said I had refused counseling. He painted me as a man hunting for an exit and pleased to find a reason. The sentences stacked well. If I didn't know my own life, I might have nodded along. Patricia stood like she was getting up from a kitchen table. No show, all purpose. Your Honor, she said, we'd like to enter exhibits. Screens slid forward in neat order. The group chats with timestamps that didn't blush, the celebratory photos from Billings, the logs of calls to my work after I asked for no contact, the visit to my mother's house labeled as concern but carrying a tale that didn't belong to me. She didn't sharpen her voice. She didn't need to. Piece by piece, she walked the judge through a map. Months of planning for a lesson in independence, lines rehearsed, contingencies listed, laughter documented. She paused at a photo where my Broncos cap perched on Marissa's head, the caption about freedom, bright as neon. This is the same evening the respondent was seeking transport home, she said, and let the timestamps speak their clean language. I watched Lena's face learn its limits. Her lawyer leaned close, whispered with urgency that looked like static. The judge read without changing expression. He asked 2 questions, both about dates. Patricia answered with a fingertip on paper. The room felt honest in a way that hurt. When the ruling came, it was simple. Divorce granted. Equal division. No spousal support. No findings of abuse or abandonment. The gavel didn't sound dramatic. It sounded like what meeting would. A small, finished thing. In the hallway, the light was kinder. Lena stepped toward me, eyes bright with a kind of last-minute invention. Evan, she began, reaching for a future that wasn't there. Patricia moved between us, voice firm. No contact. It wasn't cruel. It was a boundary finally spoken aloud. I walked out into late winter sun. The suit felt lighter. Traffic hummed its indifferent lullaby. I unlocked my truck, sat for a minute with the engine off, and let the quiet name me. Not husband. Not defendant. Just a man whose hands remembered how to make something stand plumb and stay. Spring found me without asking permission. 3 years had rinsed the road dust from my lungs. Work wore a new name. Thompson Contracting, stenciled on the side of a used white van that smelled like plywood and beginnings. We started small. Bathrooms that needed the grace of square corners, decks with loose rails, fences that wanted a second life. Kevin came on first, arms like honest lumber, laugh easy as a levels bubble. Marcus joined when his crew thinned and word spread that we showed up on time and left things straighter than we found them. The phone rang because one kitchen led to a neighbor's porch led to a church ramp that made Sundays gentler for a woman with a cane. Reputation is just love measured in callbacks. I bought a modest house on the west side of Colorado Springs, a one-story with a tired lilac out front and a garage that could hold tools and quiet at the same time. Evenings, I'd pull a folding chair into the driveway and listen to the neighborhood change light. A kid practiced trumpet badly, then better. Someone grilled something that reached the street like a promise. Inside, walls wore colors I chose because they didn't shout. A table held the weight of dinner for one without wobbling. I let the yard go a little wild in the corners on purpose. News of Lena arrived like junk mail, intermittent, addressed by habit. Marcus caught me at the hardware store and said she'd remarried someone from work 6 months after the decree. A year later, it ended. I didn't ask why. Answering would have required a new vocabulary I didn't need. I heard, quietly, that Marissa's company cut ties after her calls to my job created the kind of liability HR files and read. Chloe found fewer listeners when stories curved away from the truth. Friends compared notes, and the shine dulled. I didn't keep a scoreboard. Consequences don't ask for my applause. What I keep are smaller things. The first invoice with my logo. The way a client's shoulders drop when a door finally latches without shutter. My mother learning my side in the soft safety of a Sunday call, then sending me a recipe for the cornbread my dad loved. The plant from the old apartment, still reaching for the window like hope that refuses to be dramatic. People ask, sometimes, what I learned. I say winter teaches you where drafts live. That care without respect is weather, impressive, but not shelter. That laughter isn't always a kindness. Mostly, I learned to leave when a room keeps making me smaller. To build rooms that don't. On some evenings the air is so clear I can see the mountain ridgeline like a seam holding the sky to the land. I stand there and think of the gas station in Montana, of wind and distance and a wrong set of keys. I'm not grateful for it. I'm grateful for the door it showed me, and the hands I still have to build another.